As we bring him up, I will talk a little bit about
will look good on camera. And so real good shape unless you really miss me.
hello, everybody. Joining the Meet the Miniaturist live stream. Happy Sunday, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you guys are joining from. Please reach out in the chat box and say hello. I'd like to hear from you. It's been a while. It's been like a month since I've had one of these, and I'm so happy to be back and doing them. So welcome as you guys are joining. Welcome to this live stream. Say hello in the chat box. Tell me where you're joining from. If you're a first-time joiner, let me know. Hi, Gina. Good to see you. Good to see you. Hi, Barbara and Benny. Benny, yay, I missed you too. I know I was saying right before this live stream, I'm like, I miss everybody. So it's good to see everybody again. Hi, Anita and Beth and Arlene and Nicole. Yay, New Jersey. I know it's been a month and there's been some good reasons because I've been busy with some other stuff, which is all good. Definitely keep reaching out in the chat box and say hello. I like to hear from everybody. It's so good to see everybody again. Hi, Mary. Good to see you in Ohio. And I know I met you at the Guild show. I didn't have that as a follow-up, as a point to talk about, but the Guild show did just happen. I'd love to hear from folks who have been there. Happy Thanksgiving, Canadians. Good to see you. Hey, Omaha. Good to see you, Lydia. Happy Thanksgiving to Clinton. Hi, Jolene. All right, so we are coming up on the hour. It's actually a little past. I'll do some housekeeping. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining this live stream. Continue to say hello in the chat box. I read every single one of these comments afterwards. If you are joining for the first time, I am Darren. I am an unapologetic miniaturist, I call myself. And I'm really focused on raising awareness of miniatures as an art form. And I do that through gallery showings, talks. I do a lecture series to arts organizations, museums, libraries. If you have one that you want to bring me on to talk to, I do a webinar series for folks who have clubs and organizations. So definitely reach out if you know of an organization, a local group that maybe wants to hear about miniatures, who maybe don't know about miniatures. I have a presentation on them that I'm happy to present to clubs, libraries, organizations. But I also sell miniatures, and that's really how I make my living. I do that through estate sales and auctions. In fact, I just had a humongous auction. And a big thank you for those of you who are on the line now and may have joined the auction, watched last weekend or 2 weekends ago. It was the Buckalter estate sale. It was a wonderful, wonderful event. If you were a bidder, if you're a watcher, or just there to see the excitement, it was really fun. So thank you if you were able to join that event. I actually have another eBay sale coming up. It's another estate sale, a much smaller collection, much more manageable, but some really quality artisan pieces and some non-artisan commercial pieces there. So we're going to put that in the Donald's on the line. Say hello to Donald, folks. I'm going to put that in the comment section if you want to hop on to my eBay selling store. Go there, favorite it so that you get alerts and updates and all that kind of stuff. That sale is happening next Sunday, the 17th. Starting at 7 p.m. Eastern time. It will last 1 week. So you have a whole week to go, watch, look at stuff, bid, and then the sale will actually close on the 24th of October. At 7 p.m. Eastern time. If you've got a collection that you want to sell, definitely reach out. You can call me, you can email me. I'm going to put my info in the box if you don't know it already. Let's collect offline. But they call me the Dollhouse Whisperer. And that's because I feel like I tend to make really good connections with folks. I have a good understanding of what their needs are. So if you have if you want to do some estate planning, give me a call. If you have a collection that you want to sell, let's talk about it. But I'm also doing a special webinar on options for selling your adored miniatures collection. So look for that through my email. If you want to learn a little bit more about what it takes and what it means to sell your collection, what your options are, I'm going to take you through that on a special webinar. And finally, this estate sale from last weekend was so amazing. I'm going to do a special live stream patrons event. I'm going to do an auction deconstruction. We're going to talk about that auction. We're going to talk about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was disappointing. We're going to learn about what what really drove interest, what didn't maybe. So I'm going to do this whole deconstruction as a special patrons club event. So if you're interested in that, definitely join the patrons club. I'm going to put the link there, become a member, and then you can, participate in events like that, as well as other exclusive content. So with that, also, don't miss my next Meet the Miniaturist, which is next Sunday. At this time, 4 p.m. Eastern time, I will be chatting with Al Chalosky. He's an urban expressionist, I call him. He's a miniaturist, more detailed miniatures that reflect, places and which have been taken away from us due to gentrification, and important to him in his life. He's got a show coming up, so you're not going to want to miss that. Meet the Miniaturist. And then finally, you know where to find me on all my social media channels. We're going to put the link in the comment section. Like, subscribe, follow, and all that kind of stuff. And with that, I am going to introduce Nick LeVasseur. And he is a miniaturist I found online. Where else do I find them? Doing some really, really wonderful things. We're going to post his Instagram and his YouTube channel in there. But as we bring him up, I will talk a little bit about just, his overall style, aesthetic, his whole vibe. It really just got me crazy interested, and I wanted to have him on for this live stream. So welcome, Nick. Great to have you. Great to see you here. Thank you for joining us here. So let's sort of get right into it. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about your aesthetic. Let's talk about where all this inspiration comes. Let's talk first and foremost about the types of content and miniatures you create. And then we'll talk a little bit more about what you do with them to bring them to life, i.e. photography and video. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about take a step back of where you come from, because that has a lot to do with what you do with your miniatures today. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about your interest in miniatures. Where did it come from? Where did that start? And then maybe what inspired it?
Yeah, I've only been doing it for less than 2 years. So probably a couple months after the whole pandemic happened, I had a little free time on my hands. And like you were alluding to, I'm a filmmaker. So
Yes.
I have all this film equipment and knowledge with lighting. And I was sitting around thinking, well, what if I try to make a small scene and then use it for a video? And so I just started messing around with making miniature scenes. And my aesthetic is definitely a little more on the spookier side sometimes. And so I've done some stuff in the past on abandoned places. And so I had this idea of making miniature scenes, dioramas, places that are abandoned, and really just started learning on YouTube, I guess, how to do some of it, and buying different materials and playing around, and just got started making some abandoned little interiors mostly. But
yeah, let's talk about that whole idea about the abandoned environment and structure. That actually began a few years back. You are a filmmaker by trade. That is your background. Talk a little bit about, there's this very special film that you created and worked with on making, and talk a little bit of how that sort of became your inspiration. Did they all happen at once? What came first?
Yeah. So back in 2008, I think, was my first time going to this place. I grew up on Long Island, New York, and probably 30-45 minutes away from my home, there was not one, but like 3 different massive abandoned mental asylum places that had been abandoned for, at least 20 years, had 300 acres of buildings, this huge place. And I started going there, exploring some of the buildings and learning photography, really. I just thought the decaying buildings with the peeling paint and broken glass and all the different things looked awesome and beautiful. And it was such a place that was kind of frozen in time, and nature was taking it back over. And so I thought that was awesome to try to capture. And so for a number of years, I went there, and then by 2015, I had a small film company with a couple friends, and we decided to make a short documentary film on the place. And so we spent a month or two going to that place with all of our expensive camera gear, trying to capture the place and tell the story of some of the history. I mean, it was like 100 years old, and a lot of the history of our mental health practices and knowledge sometimes wasn't so great. And so to remember some of that and know where we came from And to continue talking about mental health today, I think is a great idea. And so we were
Yeah.
doing that through these buildings that were now just abandoned. And so that was my inspiration. I just was sitting around now. I live in Virginia, so I'm sitting here during the pandemic. Hadn't been exploring places like that in a long time, and thought, well, maybe I could make a miniature that would represent a place like that, but I could leave out some of the graffiti and maybe vandalism that happens, unfortunately, and just show the beauty of what that kind of a place looks like. And but then I can use my cameras and lights to make it look kind of realistic, and that was my goal.
Yeah,
So
I want to actually share, if folks have not, seen any of your work yet, I just wanted to share a little bit about what we're actually talking about, because I think it's hard to grasp unless you actually see. I don't know if you guys can see the video. If you guys tell me if you can see it in the sharing the screen right now. But what's interesting, what you just said, Nick, and it's about finding the beauty, and finding the beauty out of something that's not so great. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about an insane asylum, but you've actually been able to find the beauty, and I think that's what is really strikes me most about your work, is that you do see the beauty, and it does elicit emotion. It creates emotion, and that's why I'm so struck by your work and what you've done here. So let's talk a little bit about that. Yeah, you're at home. There's COVID happening. You're faced with a lot of time, but do you have all these tools available to you? I mean, what came first?
yeah. No, not really. I mean, I had some paint, some little things around because I messed with little miniatures for like board gaming, tabletop gaming before, but not much. And but I had an interest in art always since high school, and so I don't know if it started with maybe I wanted to try to sculpt something out of clay a couple of years ago, and just started getting into that a little bit, and it sparked this like desire to be more, involved in art and craft again. So once
Yeah,
it started, I think I got just a few items, just to make something pretty simple. Used, really cheap craft paints and whatever I could find.
yeah,
And I was impressed with what I came out with at the time. I mean, when I look at that first piece now, it wasn't very good. There were a couple things that were terrible, but the idea
you're
of
really
making
hard on yourself. You're probably your toughest critic, because you would never know that's your first piece. You just see it's awesome.
no, I just enjoyed the process of, well, I made it, but then I could
Yeah,
film it, and that's still really what drives it. Like I enjoy making the miniatures now, but it's the photography and filming it afterwards to make it come to life a little more.
yeah,
And because, like I said, I've only been doing it for so long, and I see so many miniaturists out there that are incredible. I mean, their work can sit on a shelf in a museum, whatever, and it
yeah,
speaks for itself. I don't know that my stuff is at that quality, and I don't know how long it might take me to get there, but the way that I film it,
yeah,
you can see it in a little different way, and I think that's my strength. And so I definitely, because I've been doing it so much longer, the
mhm,
filmmaking side is definitely my strength. And so I think that takes my work a little bit to the next level, whereas it might not stand out too much
yeah.
from
Well,
others.
let's talk about that, because the miniatures are not necessarily the art, although they're awesome in of themselves. The ultimate product, if you will, or the ultimate piece is either the film or the photograph. And I think when we were talking earlier on, when we first chatted, you were telling me about how you create with the camera in mind, not necessarily the finished piece in mind. Talk a little bit about that and what the differences might be there for, let's say, the dollhouse, quote unquote, or miniatures enthusiast out there. What are some of the differences? What are some of the things that drive the decisions you make when you're creating a piece?
Yeah, so when I first started, I was probably in the 1/18th scale range. I was kind of just making whatever worked with. I had just bought a new 3D printer when I really started getting to it, and whatever I could print off of that, which is kind of small. And so I've moved more into 1/12 scale, I think, now in interiors because it just allows me a lot more room to move my camera. But right
Mm,
from the start, I basically will plan out how I'm going to have light flood into it, where I can have the camera angles. And so instead of a dollhouse, which oftentimes feels like you're almost cramped, like the rooms are not huge. And so to try to get a camera in there, and some of them are interior rooms, you couldn't really light them as easily. This I'm making specifically usually for a certain camera angle and a certain way that I'm going to have light come in, which is usually maybe a set of windows. And so I know I'm going to bring light through, and maybe with some haze, make it look like there's dust, and you can see the light rays come in. And so yeah, just like in that clip.
yeah.
And so these pieces often, like that interior, especially, this was extra big. I think it was probably 18 inches wide by 18 inches deep. And
Mhm.
so it's not even something that I'm going to keep and store. I think I've repurposed some of the pieces, and kind of gotten rid of the shell because it was so big. But um, I mean, there is one behind me. I don't know how much you can see. It just looks like a box, because some of these I only make the interior, and I don't even pretty up the exterior because I make it to film, and then it kind of goes on the shelf. And um, to be honest, some of them I don't even know what I'm going to do with yet.
Right.
They kind of sitting on my shelf. But from the beginning, most of them I'm only thinking about how it's going to look from the camera. I've made a couple that could be display pieces, but the they're the minority for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about what inspires, let's say, a piece that you're doing. What comes first? I mean, are you, does a full size image spark your interest, or is it already floating around your head? How does that work?
Yeah. I mean, I started with just looking through some of my old photos of real places that I had been to, and I made a few of those. I've gone on to taking inspiration from others. There's a lot of people that I follow on Instagram, so I'll find a photo and reach out and see if they'd be okay with me remaking it. And
Uh,
lately, I've been finding scenes in movies too that fit my theme, and I'd like to recreate. There's a lot of people that just love seeing anything that's made in the world of a movie that they enjoy. So that's been fun too. But I just look on the internet for inspiration a lot, and
yeah.
once I see something that catches my eye, usually something that just has really interesting lighting, or um, a detail that I'd love to try to recreate in miniature. And I usually just get as many angles of that thing that I can, and just start planning. I do a lot of 3D modeling, so if there's something with a unique window or item in there, I'll 3D model a piece. So all that stuff I kind of plan ahead of time, and make sure I know exactly how much space, how big I need to make the thing to pull off what I want to do with the camera.
Well, so that actually ties into a question we have from one of our participants talking about, do you scratch build everything? I mean, you mentioned you work in 3D modeling, so obviously 3D is one of the techniques you probably employ. And then we're going to talk about how you decorate and weather and those techniques in a bit. But just in terms of your, building, you're starting from scratch in most cases.
Yes and no. So I'm not a miniaturist who literally just scratch builds every little piece. I I will build the frame out of MDF wood and start building some things from scratch. But I use 3D printing, so I'll 3D model some furniture, windows, and 3D print those items. Um, Basically, to give you a little bit of backstory, I'm running a YouTube channel, and right now I'm trying to create one of these every 2 weeks for YouTube. So I
Ah,
have to create the thing, um, film it, edit the video, do the voice, so all that kind of stuff within 2 weeks, and I have a full-time job.
yeah,
So a lot of what I do is less on how well I could make it, and more on getting it to an acceptable level of detail in the
yeah.
quickest time. And so 3D printing for me has been a lifesaver for that. I can not have to think about how I'm going to make a chair from scratch and make it look realistic enough. I can 3D model it fairly quickly and know that it's going to be perfectly like proportioned.
Yeah.
And so that edge has kind of made my scenes look a little more realistic, I think. Scratch building has that aesthetic of like, sometimes it can be whimsical if that's your style, but sometimes it's just a little bit more miniature than realism. And I'm trying to go, I guess my style is to be as realistic as possible, but still have that little bit of that doesn't quite look real because it's miniature. And so 3D
Uh,
printing things like that have been my go-to.
so that's interesting what you're saying. So what are some of the things that you do to find that balance? Is it scaling? Is it how you decorate? Like, how do
Yeah,
you get to that point where you're like, this is my aesthetic? I guess it's just back to art. This is how you see it, how you want to see it.
yeah, that's true. Well, I think for sure the idea or the fact that I do everything so far kind of abandoned, old, weathered, um, that helps me because I'm so new to modeling. I've actually only done this style, and so if I were to go and try to make something realistic that is new and upkept, I'd probably have a hard time actually. Like you'd be able to see my mistakes a lot easier.
Right.
Whereas right now I know how to cover it up with some of my weathering and all that. And so um, I'll go in and I'll 3D print stuff. I think making sure everything is really well scaled for sure is
Yeah.
a big thing to me. A few people have said that I've had a good record of having my items in the correct scale, because as soon as, you know, maybe a chair is too big or too small in the scene, it takes the viewer out of it. It doesn't feel real anymore. And so trying to make sure that, and sometimes that means printing something a couple times because I didn't get the size quite right at first. And once I see it in my hand, I'll scale it a little differently.
Right.
Um, but
Right.
then it comes down to the weathering. I think I have built up this just knowledge now of what will look good on camera. And so in person, there might not be as like intricate detail that you can look from your eye in person. But on camera and with the dark lighting that I use, I kind of know how much detail I need to put in to make it stand out. But that isn't going to take me a month to weather, you know, one little piece of furniture, right? So
Yeah.
I've kind of just learned what that looks like as I go.
Mm.
I'm still learning because
Yeah.
unfortunately I keep on having these bigger and bigger ideas, but my time frame is still the same. That's right. So I'm trying to learn efficiency and get better and make it more detailed models, but
Yeah.
still keep it in that 2 week frame. So
So I'm sharing some of your the tutorials. The content that you have on Instagram is great, but folks, if you want to see the full on um, videos, Nick is you're very generous with sharing your knowledge, which is really wonderful, and it's so welcomed in this community. So I wanted to share. This is just your quicken version, which is on your Instagram account, but your YouTube videos, you go through in detail how you achieve this work and what it takes to get there. So let's talk a little bit about those techniques and how, you know, what are some of the techniques that you employ in terms of how you decorate and how you what's the better word for it? Decorate? Paint?
yeah,
I mean, yeah,
weather, yeah,
weather. Yeah.
a lot of it. I mean, I've watched so many other creators on YouTube over the last year and a half, and just trying to pick little bits of techniques from everybody that work for me. Um and so there have been a few. I have done my own like trial and error type stuff, and I've come up with a couple techniques. I'm sure other people have done them plenty of times, but there are so many different maybe niches in the miniature world that some of the knowledge doesn't transfer over all the time. And so I've been trying to reach out to different areas and gain other knowledge, like the model train world, like different scales. And so for me, like I think something that people might say is a big thing of my aesthetic is how I do the paint on the walls a lot of the time. So a lot of the old abandoned buildings that you can go see in real life
Uh,
have old lead paint, and so they start peeling off the walls in a very specific way, dramatically sometimes. It's just really cool big pieces of paint that are peeling off but still attached. And so I do a technique a lot where I'll do like a base color of paint on a wall and use liquid latex. It's usually made for making molds of things. But
mhm.
if I kind of just dab latex in different areas and then paint over it again, once that dries, you can kind of just rub the areas where the latex was, and it peels the paint right up. And
Yeah.
so that's one of the big things that I do that works on furniture and other things as well. But for the walls, I use a lot of different weathering techniques, a lot of pigment powders to make things look either dusty or dirty or rusted. And so I found, there are a lot of people that specialize in miniature World War II or tank scenes and all of that old metal. They go through and they spend hours rusting things. And so I take little things from them and try to simplify it so it doesn't take me hours and hours.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I think it's amazing what you do. Actually, what's so great about what you do is that it does play into so many other sort of categories of miniatures. You've got the war gamers, you've got the, the model railroaders, so you're pulling in from all those different places where the traditional dollhouse and miniature world, we pretty much stick to this, which is not always good. I think, I think just as a community, we need to look outside of just our own little world. But it's great that you have all of those vehicles, to sort of play in and explore and gain inspiration from and knowledge from, and then you take it and you adapt it and then you're giving it back, which I think is just really wonderful. I just want to take another question. Anita is asking what the inspiration for the cream colored room I think we just shared, when you're applying the age process with a brush to the settee. She's actually saying that she recognizes this room within a vacant mansion in the Philadelphia area. Is that where it came from?
yeah,
Uh,
it is. It is.
oh, good eye, Anita. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I haven't been there. One of my favorite YouTubers that do that urban exploring type video, they went there and they took a picture that was exactly like that, pretty much. And so when
oh,
I saw that, I reached out to them and said, let me do that because it looks awesome. And I thought maybe some of the detailing in the trim and like wainscoting and even some of the lamps, I 3D printed and modeled like lamps that looked just like those. So I knew it was going to be a little more difficult for me and I wanted to push myself. So that's why I did it. Yeah, I think I can't remember the name of the mansion now. It's privately owned, but for a bit there, people were exploring it
yeah.
um, and so yeah, that's where it came from.
Troy wants to know how you created the fog and the smoke effects.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a big part of what I do is the filmmaking side. So there's a couple different things that I've been doing. I wish I had one on hand, but there's something called haze in a can or fog in a can,
Oh
and it's
wow.
just an aerosol can, and it's perfect for smaller sets like this. I literally set up my set with the lighting, and can just spray the aerosol can a few times. It fills the room with fog, and it leaves pretty quickly, so I have to work fast. But what
Yeah.
I've done to get a little bit technical, but not too much, is a lot of the shots that I do in video, I actually film at a higher frame rate and slow
Oh.
it down. So it's like I'm filming in slow motion because fog, and actually I've used baby powder for little dust particles. Uh,
Ah.
any of that stuff when it's moving in real life,
Yeah.
it moves very fast in the scope of a miniature. And so if you actually film in slow motion,
Oh,
it moves a little more closely to the speed that it would in a real room. And so that's the big effect that I try to
that's
do.
a great little tip. Awesome. You mentioned, and we were talking a little bit about this before we started, that you've been working in interiors for a while now, and that you're stretching the limits now, and you're working on exteriors. Can you talk a little bit about some of that work you're doing now and what that looks like?
Yeah, yeah. So right now, this is a part of one of mine. It's not going to come out on YouTube for a couple weeks, but
Uh,
because it's Halloween month, October, this is part of. There's going to be an extension off the back too. This is part of the cabin from the old Evil Dead movies. So this
uh,
is the first exterior building that I've done. I've done like, exterior like a single wall or something, but I've never tried to do a building. So this is in 1/24th scale,
yeah,
and
scale.
I'm I'm just trying to learn little things. So the big thing for me on this one was the roofing. I actually made a little template um, that I can take tinfoil. This is all tinfoil, and push the tinfoil over to kind of get this pattern, like the tin
Wow.
roof pattern, and then I airbrush painted it and glued it on. But yeah, I couldn't find anything that was kind of pre-made for that. It's all in like the railroad train scales that are much smaller, and 1/24 or 1/12 scale, there was almost nothing that I could find. So I had to make a template and
So,
do it.
so that's actual tinfoil that you use for the roof. And how did you stiffen it? Paint?
So that's the problem. It's I made the structure of the house out of foam core material, so it's like foam with paper on the outside, and then I started, putting all the wood on it. So all it is foam board underneath, and so
Oh,
it's still tinfoil, so the edges are very fragile, um, but it's perfect because it's abandoned. It doesn't need to look perfect, so it's bent up and hold and use. So it's not a problem for this model to have it be that fragile. But yeah, once I glued it to the foam board, it's fairly good.
yeah.
It holds its shape unless you really mess with it.
Yeah.
So
And it's
yeah.
real metal. It's a real metal roof at that point, which is amazing. Wow. That's great. That's
So
great.
that's the exterior. I mean, like I said, it's the first one that I've ever tried, and I have ideas to do an even crazier one. And I don't know if you wanted to talk about it now, but
Yeah.
this box that I have behind me.
Yeah.
Um, I'll switch to the other camera. If that, yeah, there you go. So that's looking into that box that's behind me. And so right now it's not lit with my professional lights and everything, but it's one of those that I made in 1/12 scale dollhouse furniture. Like the couch I bought is a dollhouse piece.
Yep.
Everything else I 3D printed. And then I made it with that idea of all these windows and vines. I could have my lights kind of streaming in through the windows, and really kind of make it look like it's a house that somebody maybe
Yeah.
left without taking all of their stuff out, and it's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
a lot
awesome.
of people mentioned when they saw this one that the pictures on the walls, if they were older like that, they should have frames, and I agree. That's one of my biggest things. I wish I could go back, but I was crunched for time, so I just
Yeah.
stuck them up there. But that's kind of what it looks like. I mean,
Wow.
that's what I mean by making some of these for the camera
Yeah.
inside with my camera view. That's the whole world of it, and then
So,
outside it's just a little box. So
so did you say you work off of a time frame that allows you to post every few weeks, you say, right? So
yeah.
is a project is basically around 2 weeks for you. You feel like you need to get it done in 2 weeks.
Yeah. So that's just because I'm really trying to grow my YouTube channel and get somewhere with it where I could justify spending more time. I have a full-time job right now, and fortunately, I've been like on a work from home basis, and so
Yeah.
at least half the time. And so
Yeah.
sometimes I can get up in the morning, I can do some gluing and painting and let it dry while I actually do my real work, and that's been flexible. But a lot of nights and definitely most of my weekends
Yeah.
go to this. And I don't think I'd be able to do it if I hadn't had the experience in video that I had, because it still takes a lot of time, but I can edit a lot faster. I don't have to learn how to create videos, right? I've already got that, and so I'm just learning the modeling. And but yeah, I try to do that. And so I started in January, and so at least with my YouTube channel. And so I'm
Yeah.
thinking maybe once I get into next year, maybe at least by the summer for sure, I can have a little bit more of a platform where it's making a little bit of money, and I can start taking a little more time, and maybe only do one a month every once in a while to make a really nice bigger project. But right now, yeah, just trying to keep it to two
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah. No, I mean your content is awesome and your following is growing. I'm watching the numbers. It's showing because the numbers are growing because you're really delivering awesome content. So I mean I see that happening. So congratulations on that. We did get a question about how you shoot. Um, do you have special cameras? I guess my question is how do you get that smooth movement? Are
Yeah.
there, well, yeah. Can you talk about the equipment?
Yeah. So for those of you that want to know even more, my most recent video, I think was a week ago on my YouTube channel, actually goes into some of this.
Oh,
Um, it shows my whole camera setup. Unfortunately, I'm using my normal camera right now for this live stream, but yeah, I have a camera rig that
rig.
consists of probably $5,000 worth of camera, and then there is a whole motion, like a motor, motion controlled slider rig that's probably close to $3,000 itself, that I use to get all the smooth movement. So it's not cheap stuff. Some of it I have upgraded to since I started the channel, but I've been doing film for a while. So I have lights. I have a lot of equipment that I've built up over years. And actually in the YouTube video, I show you how, as long as if you have a good light, you can actually take something like an iPhone and get something similar to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Similar enough that that's what I would absolutely recommend for those of you who are just getting started. Don't think you need to spend thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But I do. So the lens, actually, let me grab it because it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
The lens that I use is a specialty lens, and
Mhm.
it's not something that I recommend unless you're really going to get into this. And at that point, it is amazing. Um,
And did you get this specifically for the miniature work, or you had this before? You did. You
I,
got.
I was always interested in it, but then once I started doing the miniature work, it kind of let me have a
Yeah.
nerd.
Yeah. It's
Well,
an investment.
this looks really strange,
Wow.
but it's called a probe lens. It's a macro lens, and so I can I think within like a half an inch or an inch, I can get up to and focus on an object. And so, you can get up to a bug's eye and focus on it if you wanted. But the idea of it for me is it's a wide angle lens. It's a 24 millimeter, and so I can actually put this inside of my scene, but it still has a wide angle view. And so it really felt like what it felt like when I stood inside of a real building with my wide angle lens on my camera. And then with my motorized slider, I can, push in through a doorway of my scene, or, do different things, be slowly pushing over the floor. And it really gives that kind of next level feel that the camera's really inside this miniature scene. So this
Yeah.
is a specialty lens. It's not cheap, and it's really hard to work with. You have to have really bright lights, and so
Hmm.
there's a whole workflow that I have to use in order to use it. So it's not like a beginner thing. But
Yeah.
I've a few other people now using it for miniature filmmaking, and it's made my work stand out. I think it's really just something that's been awesome. So
Yeah. Wow. I mean, you're already next level, and now it's all coming. Now it's making sense. Why? Like, it's not only the miniatures, it's not only the weathering and the decorating techniques. It's your filming. It's all of the apparatus, all the actual camera. And now you're talking about, and then there's lighting, and there's someone else mentioned, music, which is also another element that you use to bring this all together and bring it all to life. And it's just, you are creating mini movies is what you're doing at the end of the day. You're creating mini movies without voice. I mean, you have every other element, right?
sure, yeah,
Um,
appreciate that. And I think that's only because I've been doing video for so long that I have some of those naturally. It would take so long for me to learn, and that's why I think a lot of people, it takes them a couple of years to really build up their YouTube channel because they're learning all of that at once. And
right.
so, I have that fortunate experience on that end. But tell you what, before this, I was never in front of a camera. I'm not really all that comfortable. I mean, I'm fine talking, I guess, in front of people, but it's not what I like to do. And
Yeah.
so I've had to learn that a little bit. I've had to learn all of the modeling, obviously, but trying to bring that all together and then use the filmmaking as my strength. I think that's just been able to make the main reason why my channel's been growing as it has, because it's a little bit different than your average person. You usually, people are great at the modeling side, but they
Yeah.
don't film them in any particular way, right? So
Yeah.
that's it. I love it. That's my favorite part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it stands out.
Yeah, it's definitely, I see it as a completely 360 approach to telling stories. I mean, you're starting from building this, you're starting with a photograph, you're starting with an idea, you're building the set, you're filming it, you're photographing it, you're adding all of the other elements, and then you're presenting it and in a compelling way. So lots going on. It's just really, really great to see. So what's next for you? We saw the exterior structure happening. what else can we look forward to over the next, every 2 weeks, I guess?
Yeah.
What are some of your bucket list items? What are the things that we might see down the pike?
Well, I know this audience in particular would be happy. I did purchase probably a month and a half ago now a dollhouse to turn into like a spooky abandoned actual dollhouse over time. I've
Oh,
had so many projects lined up in the last couple of months that I haven't started it yet, but probably December, January time, I'm going to start doing that. And I'll probably do like almost a room by room type of thing. Each video will be one room, but it's like I think it's a 9 room, 3-story little Victorian. So that'll be
wow.
fun. Um,
And
that'll,
where did you find this? Did you build it? Did you find it? You bought
yeah,
it?
it's just a kit. Yeah, I think honestly, I think I got it from Hobby Lobby. It was just one of those cheaper kits. It was probably $100 or something.
Wow.
Um, I forget the name of it, but it had the look that I was like, yeah, I could turn that into a creepy looking haunted house or something. So it's just going to be a long-term project.
Yeah.
But I want to do that. Um, the next couple of weeks are going to be kind of more spooky. So I've been doing these interiors a lot. I'm starting on this exterior. The video that's going to come out next week is actually totally different. I sculpted a large tree out of clay and made an entire scene around it to film. And so, if any of you have seen the movie Sleepy Hollow by Tim Burton, the Tree of the Dead scene, I've kind of recreated that a little bit and used a smoke machine to make the whole place look like it's foggy, just like the movie. So that's coming out next week. And then I am doing one more exterior in November. Uh, but it's going to be ambitious, and
All
so
right.
I'm a little worried about it. But I'm just trying to, again, working in 1/24th and being an exterior, I have to worry about all these things that I haven't thought of before, like roofing, shingles, and
Yeah.
siding. And so I'm working through all of that. But um, probably after that one, I'll get back to a few more interiors, maybe that dollhouse.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Awesome.
I have big ideas down the road, but it's more of thinking, all right, how can I do a long-term project, maybe behind the scenes as I'm doing smaller ones. And so I can keep the 2-week schedule going, but come out with a really big one every once in a while. And so
Yeah.
that's what I want to do next year. So
Cool. Well, lots of energy around the Halloween house. They're looking forward to seeing all that happen. Lots of great comments around the Evil Dead shack, which is great. We'll take one more question. Dave wants to know: are you building a full set of buildings on a block, or a similar sort of setup, or is everything is pretty individual, right?
everything has been pretty individual. I've had the idea, and people have pointed out that because I did so many from like abandoned mental asylums, that I could almost do one
Yeah.
that's like a dollhouse, but where you just make a whole bunch of them and make even maybe hallways that could connect to them.
Oh
That
yeah.
might be something I do in the future, but no, right now everyone has been unique enough because of the
Mhm.
way that I want to film them, that they're totally different. Some are bigger, some are smaller. Um, I've had a lot of people start to ask me if I sell them, and so some of them I think are too large in like this box. It's not something that I think uh, needs to sit on somebody's shelf. It's not a work of art. I really made it for the film, but
Yeah.
I'm starting to come up with some of these ideas that can kind of do both. And so I may start selling some of them in the future. But
L-
yeah,
L-
we'll see.
yeah. Laura says it is a work of art, and I agree, and that she would donate a kidney to have one. Awesome. Oh my God. All right. So this has been amazing. Nick, thank you so much for spending time with us today. This has been an amazing experience. We have put in the comment section where we can find you, but I encourage folks to check your YouTube channel out if they haven't already, to follow you on Instagram. And with that, I would like to say thank you, Nick, and thank you guys at home for joining us for this Meet the Miniatures. I'm so glad we're back. It's been way too long, but thank you again for the folks at home. Recommending following Nick, definitely. I'll see you guys next Sunday for Meet the Miniaturist, and don't forget to check out my upcoming eBay sale, which is happening next Sunday. And until next time, everybody have a great day, night, weekend, or the rest of the week. All right. Great to see everybody. Bye.